Believe me, I actually took some time thinking about what exactly it was I wanted to make this first video about, and I was debating to myself internally, do I really want to talk about the Penguins, and if it's the end of an era, and if the big three, they're going to be separated? And I was like, that's a great topic, we can talk about that for sure, but you know what? I just really, really like this topic that we're talking about here. You know me, I like the prospects, and normally, under normal circumstances, I wouldn't really choose to cover something like this, because when you think about the views and how exactly I have to view my YouTube channel as a business in terms of maximizing profit, a Penguins, Crosby, Malkin, Letang video probably could get a little bit more traction in the short term, but this kind of thing that we're actually doing, the prospects, underrated prospects in the NHL, this kind of topic brings a lot more fulfillment when I talk about it. So let's go over the AHL's all-rookie team, because that was published earlier this week. And from this all-rookie team, I wanted to get a conversation going as to some of the most underrated prospects in the National Hockey League today. Okay, no, not the National Hockey League, technically the American Hockey League, but they're affiliated with NHL teams, and as a result, I do think there is some value in talking about some of these players here. So let's go over the Florida Panthers, the Vegas Golden Knights, the Minnesota Wild, the Dallas Stars, the Washington Capitals, and the Nashville Predators. Almost all of these teams, with the exception of the Vegas Golden Knights, have been eliminated from the playoffs, so I think having some conversations for these teams in regards to their futures is not a bad thing at the moment. So is the AHL's all-rookie team, a selection of 3 forwards, 2 defensemen, and 1 goaltender, all of whom have to be rookies in the American Hockey League, chosen in a manner that says these guys have been the best amongst all the rookies in the American Hockey League. Now, this year in the AHL, things were a little bit different because we had ourselves no OHL play and limited play in the WHL as well. Therefore, we actually had some CHL guys make their way over to the AHL, even though they were 19, some of them were 18, even though they actually wouldn't have been allowed to do that under normal circumstances. So it was really interesting, really cool opportunity to see some of these other guys play in a league that they actually shouldn't have been able to play in if the world was normal. And some of these guys were actually good enough that they were included on the AHL's all-rookie team. So let's go over from backwards to forwards, I guess, and talk about the goaltender selected for this team. Logan Thompson, out of the Henderson Silver Knight system, has an absolutely crazy story. He's 24 years old, yes, but he's a guy who just 2 years ago was playing U Sports Canadian University hockey at Brock University in Ontario. He was a WHL goaltender who didn't really have the best numbers before ending off his WHL career, and after going over to university, if you're here in Canada, you know how the U Sports system works out. The competition in U Sports really is not as good as NCAA hockey because NCAA has the money to shell out for top athletes in their positions. U Sports, it's just kind of an afterthought that you go there. If you're studying, you just happen to also play hockey, you can go into the team. And that's kind of where Logan Thompson was back in 2018-19. A really good U Sports goaltender who eventually found himself on the ECHL squad of the Adirondack Thunder, working his way up to the Binghamton Devils, playing a full season with the South Carolina Stingrays in the ECHL in 2019-20, and then in the 2020 offseason, signing a contract with the Vegas Golden Knights. He played 23 games with the Silver Knights in the AHL this year, was the best statistical goalie in the entire league with a .943 save percentage and a .196 goals against average. In the playoffs, he also did well. He was undefeated there. He even played a game with the Vegas Golden Knights too. And all this 2 years removed from being a full-time U Sports goaltender. That to me is absolutely phenomenal because the gap from the U Sports just to the AHL itself is really big. And Logan Thompson went out there and said, okay, 2 years down the road, not that big of a deal. Now he's here as the best goaltender in the AHL and part of the all-rookie team too. Next up on the all-rookie team, 2 defensemen. Firstly, Calen Addison of the Iowa Wild. This is a guy that I've seriously been in love with for a long time. We made a video talking about him as a prospect at the 2018 NHL entry draft, talking about his skills and his overall projectability as an offensive defenseman. He's a guy who was always a capable WHL point producer on the blue line. Eventually, though, in the AHL, he had 22 points in 31 games played, Absolutely great numbers to see out of a guy who was 20 for the majority of the year. He's been a successful power play quarterback everywhere he has played, at the World Juniors and the WHL, and he didn't seem to take a step back after being traded to Minnesota and playing for Iowa this season. In fact, he was playing last night when the Wild were eliminated by the Vegas Golden Knights. He was the guy who couldn't stop Mattias Janmark when Janmark was going for the empty net for the hat trick. Yeah, Addison was the guy that was kind of approaching him, and he didn't end up stopping him, and then he slammed a stick into the net. Yeah, not great, but still, he's only 21 years old. It's one of the very first showcases he has had at the NHL level, and he had an assist as well in the playoffs too. So good for him. Obviously, I'm a big believer in Addison, taking a look at what he can do in the long-term future. But the other defenseman to make the all-rookie team is Max Gildon, a guy who is over here not with the biggest numbers in the world. He maxed out this season with 19 points in 32 games played, a Florida Panthers prospect playing in the Edmonton Oilers farm system. But he's characterized by his very strong defensive play and his minute-eating qualities. He was a guy with the NTDP and with the University of New Hampshire in the NCAA who would just go out there as a rock. He was a stable, reliable, puck-moving defensive defenseman, and the offense kind of blossomed a little bit as he proceeded throughout that program. But he just played so gosh darn well for the Condors this season, and in fact is part of the reason why they're even going super far in the playoffs this year. He was drafted in the third round by the Panthers in 2017, and as a 22-year-old guy from Texas, he certainly bodes one of the more interesting paths towards potentially making the NHL. On to the forwards here. The first name we're talking about is Riley Damiani, and this is a name that I know Dallas Stars fans are going to absolutely clamor for in the next few years. You talk about how good Jason Robertson was with the Dallas Stars this season, and you take a look at how good Robertson was last year with the Texas Stars. In 2019-20, Jason Robertson scored 47 points in 60 games played as a 20-year-old in the Texas Stars system. Well, Riley Damiani went out there as a 20-year-old this year with the Texas Stars, and he was a point per game. 36 points, 36 games played for Damiani here. He literally led the team in points, and there isn't really anything else you need to say about that. He's 21, he recently turned 21 in March, but he's a guy who has literally come out here as not really showing signs of slowing down at all in any capacity, keeping up his point production from the Kitchener Rangers. Obviously, he was producing more in the OHL, but that's not really a surprise. The OHL and the AHL, there's a pretty big gap there. But Damiani, as a guy who was drafted out of the 5th round by the Dallas Stars, certainly is a very interesting and underrated prospect to keep your eye on. And I know Stars fans have been absolutely loving this guy and what he has done in Texas so far. Finally wrapping things up, the final two guys. Oh man, we'll stick with one for now, but it's the best Connor Mick in the NHL today, Connor McMichael. He's a guy who is out here for the Washington Capitals farm team on the Hershey Bears, and I've seriously been so impressed with everything Connor McMichael has done ever since being drafted 25th overall in the 2019 draft. I honestly was kind of a believer in McMichael, believing that he could have gone a little bit earlier, but after that 2019 draft, he absolutely exploded in the OHL, posting up 102 points in 52 games played. Because the OHL was shut down this year, he was able to go to the AHL. And as a guy who was 19-20 the entire year, he played 33 games, 27 points, and 14 goals. He also was over a point per game at the World Juniors for Team Canada, and he suited up for a Caps game too. Connor McMichael is seriously one of these guys who has had such a good development curve from when he was drafted up until now that it's crazy to think how good this guy could become going into the long-term future. He can play the wing, he can play center, he's a very good all-round offensively capable guy, and he pretty much just does everything right. Like everything you can be good at as a center, McMichael is pretty alright at. If you're insecure about Evgeny Kuznetsov and his long-term future with the Capitals, then hey, if Connor McMichael comes out here, he might show you that he could be the reason you might not need to worry too much. And finally, let's go over the Nashville Predators prospect right here, Philip Tomasino, the last player named to the All-Star team. He's 19 years old still. He was not supposed to be able to play in the AHL, but because of the rules, he was allowed to this year. Over a point per game, 32 points in 29 games with the Chicago Wolves, and like Calen Addison, Tomasino is a guy we've literally made a video about on this channel talking about how good he has been as a prospect. I said all the way back in 2019, this guy could be a really underrated pickup for whoever takes him in the later 20s. And the Predators, man, they're that lucky team. Tomasino is really explosive, really dynamic, he's athletic, and he knows what to do to get points. His all-around versatility is why he had 6 points in 7 games played for Team Canada at the World Juniors this year. And heading into the long-term future, this guy could be a really good top 6 forward for the Predators if you ever decide to depart with Johansson or Duchesne, for example. So that was the AHL's all-rookie team for this season. Going over it once more, Logan Thompson of the Vegas Golden Knights, Calen Addison of the Minnesota Wild, Max Gildon of the Florida Panthers, Riley Damiani of the Dallas Stars, Connor McMichael of the Washington Capitals, and Philip Tomasino of the Nashville Predators. These are some of the most underrated NHL prospects, and I just wanted to talk about them here today. Talk to me in the comments what you thought. I hope you enjoyed this video. Ash Rolls 99. And bye.